The question of principles, the question of morals. I don't have good answers for you. I have only challenges and conflict. Judge orders Trump administration to return 2 trans prisoners to women's facilities. The Federal Bureau of Prisons told to transfer women back and provide hormone therapy treatment for gender dysphoria. The one DSM-5 academically categorized mental disorder whose treatment is total affirmation. But of course, many people are shocked to find that no matter what Trump does, a judge says he cannot do it. In this instance, we as Americans are being told that after Donald Trump was elected, particularly on a wide range of issues, particularly culture war issues, such as no men and women sports, the famous commercial, Kamala is for they, them, Trump is for you. A judge has ordered male prisoners to be placed in women's facilities. What do you do? The argument from the left is this is the Constitution, but I don't believe it. And then there's the question of a moral society and how we are supposed to actually deal with these things. Should Donald Trump? Comment below. Let me know what you think. Share this story. I'm curious what other people think. Should Donald Trump abide by the judge's ruling to put men in a women's facility? Yes or no? Here's the story from The Guardian. A judge on Wednesday ordered the Federal Bureau of Prisons to transfer 2 incarcerated transgender women back to federal women's prisons after they had been sent to men's facilities after Donald Trump's executive order that truncated transgender protections. U.S. District Judge Royce Lamberth in D.C. issued a preliminary injunction after the women were added as plaintiffs. I want to pause here. You see, it's crazy. These are males. These are biological males. They say women. They've completely distorted reality to make you think, to create this perception that these are women. They were added as plaintiffs in ongoing litigation over the impact of the president's executive order on trans women in federal prisons. Lamberth ordered the Bureau of Prisons to immediately transfer the 2 women identified in court papers by the pseudonyms Rachel and Ellen Doe back to the women's facilities and said the agency must continue to provide them with hormone therapy treatment for gender dysphoria. The women said in court papers that they were living in constant fear of sexual assault and other violence after being moved to male prisons. Male prisoners repeatedly propositioned them for sex, and male officers subjected them to strip searches without female officers present, they said. Again, I'd like to stress these individuals are male in a male prison. The concern over prison rape is persistent, and it's a trope in movies, and it's an idea that's mocked, and people are ridiculed for it. No single individual, regardless of their status of dysphoric or otherwise, is free from that fear. Everyone knows it. It's torturous, and it violates the Constitution. The idea that we know in our prisons there is cruel and unusual punishment, that you will be raped. These people are not individually special for this. The problem is prison-wide. The judge should be addressing that and not transferring males to female prisons. Quote, the fact that they had already been transferred and allegedly had been abused at their new facilities can only strengthen their claim of irreparable harm, Lamberth wrote. A Bureau of Prisons spokesperson declined to comment. The preliminary injunction is the latest in a series of rulings thwarting the agency's efforts to comply with the executive order, which calls for housing transgender women in men's prisons. That is, let's try this again. I want to clean up this language to help you understand factually. I'm not interested in playing a political game in these words. The preliminary injunction is the latest in a series of rulings thwarting the agency's effort to comply with the executive order, which calls for housing men suffering from gender dysphoria in men's prison. Which calls for housing transgender women in men's prisons. Right. Okay. There we go. It calls for housing males in men's prisons, even if they are suffering from gender dysphoria, and for halting gender-affirming medical care. Lamberth, who was appointed by the Republican President Reagan, I am no fan of Reagan, mind you, previously blocked the Bureau from transferring a dozen other transgender women prisoners to men's prisons. Again, Lamberth, appointed by Reagan, previously blocked the Bureau from transferring a dozen other males suffering gender dysphoria from women's prisons to men's prisons. Insane. In a ruling last month, he ordered that housing status and medical care remain as they had been prior to Inauguration Day, when Trump signed the executive order. Separately, in January, a federal judge in Boston halted the transfer of another transgender woman to a men's prison. At the time, Rachel and Ellen Doe were not plaintiffs in any lawsuit challenging Trump's executive order and were not covered by Lamberth's initial rulings. In a court filing last month, a Trump administration official said that as of 20 February, there were 22 trans women housed in federal women's facilities. That's about 1% of the nearly 2,200 transgender prisoners the agency said it had in its custody. With Lamberth's order on Wednesday, at least 15 people are now covered by orders blocking or reversing the moves. Lamberth has yet to rule in a lawsuit filed last week by 3 other prisoners, a trans woman housed in a men's prison and 2 trans men housed in women's prisons. They are challenging the executive order's ban on gender-affirming hormone therapy and other care. Okay, let me ask you something. Trans men are biologically female. They want to be placed in men's prisons. What do you think the men in those prisons will do to females placed there? Now, I understand, like I said, rape in prison is a known problem and a trope. To be fair, the people that I've talked to who had been to prison and the stories you can read online, most people say it's exaggerated. They say it's not as bad as people claim it is. There are a lot of gay guys in prison, and so, things happen. Either way, if this does exist to any degree, it is cruel and unusual punishment. I do not see this as being a reason to put cross-sex individuals or to create co-ed prisons. The U.S. Education Department on Wednesday said it investigated and concluded Maine's Education Office, Title IX, blah, blah, blah. It's an additional to the story we don't need. Basically saying that, Trump's freezing funding. Now, I got a question for all of you, because the story extends beyond just this one case with men being transferred to women's prisons. The question is, when does Trump defy the courts? Serious question. It's a great philosophical question, and it's a question I think you're going to have to ask yourselves. Before we get to the next story, which elaborates upon this, go to castbrew.com, my friends, and buy Cast Brew coffee. It's the best coffee you will ever have. I guarantee it. I think I'm allowed to say that legally because it's an opinion statement, and I can guarantee something that is just an opinion, so sure. I know, it's pretty good coffee. Appalachian Nights, I specifically blended. I didn't think it was going to be as delicious as it was, and it turned out to be massively delicious and is our top seller. But Ian's Graphene Dream is selling like hotcakes, and we can't even keep it in stock. Sooner or later, Ian's Graphene Dream is going to take over. But don't forget, Rise with Roberto Jr. is also incredible. It's a light roast breakfast blend. Support Cast Brew Coffee, support the work that we do, buy our coffee. No, in all seriousness, it really is good stuff. Appalachian Nights is my favorite coffee. We worked really hard. It's premium. It's organic. We do the best we can. We have K-Cups. We have whole bean. We really do appreciate your support, and we're franchising. Now, here's a story from the New York Times. Judges fear for their safety amid a wave of threats. Federal judges are worried that online threats against those who oversee high-profile cases challenging Trump administration policies may lead to real-world violence. I don't know if you guys noticed, but there have been public shootings at car dealerships, several of them. There have been fire bombings of car dealerships. There have been swattings. Around 20 plus conservative personalities who, in the case of Owen Schroyer and a few others, are pulled out of their house at gunpoint by several armed officers with rifles trained on them, making them walk backwards and lay in the ground in their underwear. So judges fear for their safety. Stop playing games, people. Stop playing games. Tell me where we are. You tell me. I'm sick of saying it. Tell me where we are. Comment below. I want to hear you guys say it. I'm not trying to be disrespectful to you. I'm saying I don't even know anymore. Because I've been told over and over and over again, the escalation's not real. What does Donald Trump do? And what would you do? Now, here's the question for you. Here's the question for you in the comments. A judge orders you to place 2 males in a female prison. What do you do? Constitution says the judge's order, you got to abide by it, right? You're the president, the head of the executive branch, and you've been checked. A judge says, no, put the men in the women's prison. What do you do? What do you do? Honestly, I'm going to pause so you can think about that one. I'm going to tell you this. Welcome to a wartime presidency. The judges instructing males be put in female prisons, I believe, is unconstitutional. It violates the law. It violates, let me make sure I'm getting this one right. I want to make sure I get the full reading on this. Eighth Amendment. We'll pull this up. I don't want the interpretation. Get out of here. I want to actually read it. And we should have the, here we are. Here we go. Eighth Amendment. Excessive bail shall not be required, nor excessive fines imposed, nor cruel and unusual punishment inflicted. Tell me what that means. I say Donald Trump defy this judge because it violates the Constitution. And then what do? What do you do when a judge says, I order you to defy the Constitution? Trump swore an oath to uphold it. Trump should come out and say, the Eighth Amendment bars cruel and unusual punishment, and to place male individuals in a female prison would be cruel and unusual to those female prisoners. That's it. That's what I say. Now, these judges fear for their safety. That shows you where we are currently at. That's a terrifying reality. I don't want these judges to be harmed. I don't want any violence. None of us do. We never do. What do we get now? Kyle Kalinske posted a meme where it's a guy in a MAGA hat, a Wojak, saying boycott Bud Light, boycott Target. And then when they say boycott Tesla, he loses his mind. Nobody cares if you boycott Tesla. In fact, I'd appreciate it if you did. I'll get cars on the cheap. I like Teslas. Colbert drives a Tesla. How about that? He said it in his show a couple of years ago. The problem is the terrorism. The right is not calling for it. The left is. The right is not trying to engage in cruel and unusual punishment. The left is. The right is not targeting leftist personalities at their homes. The left is targeting the right. So I tell you, this is a wartime presidency. Donald Trump says you're a criminal, illegal alien and member of Tren de Aragua. We will deport you. Judge says, no, don't do it. Trump says we're not going to let men go into a female prison. Judge says, no, don't do it. No matter what it is that Donald Trump does, a judge is saying you can't do it. So what country do we live in? And who are you? I don't see this social structure surviving. It is impossible. I do not see a mathematical equation for its survival. Now, what does that mean? I mean, maybe it means that Trump defies the judges, and that's it. Trump says there is nothing you can do to get me or anyone else to put a man and a woman's prison. It's not going to happen. Maybe he says that. I doubt it. I really do. Trump's playing. He's still playing ball. Trump said, we're not defying the judge's orders. We're not defying the judge's orders. Okay, well, that means that he's not going to deport Tren de Aragua anymore. There's no answer. If Trump says no, the left says he's violated the Constitution. They violated the Constitution, mind you. But the interpretation of what is or isn't in violation, the left will argue that putting trans males, okay, this is not trans men, a male who is transgender in a female prison, the left will argue is cruel and unusual. The right will argue the inverse. There is no shared interpretation of what is or is not cruel and unusual. Now, I think the answer is actually really simple. If there's a conflict between both parties, then these individuals need to go to a special prison. They're in prison. They're not supposed to be getting pampered. So we can make a special facility for particularly transgender individuals, and then they will be kept safe. And then both prisons will be out of the equation, and both sides will, there you go, problem solved. But that's not what we're getting. Donald Trump has a couple options now. He can defy the courts, he can defy the judges, and the left will continue to engage in acts of terrorism. Trump can abide by the judges, I'd argue violate the Constitution, and fail his mandate. What do you think is going to happen? The majority of the population that voted for Donald Trump to solve the immigration crisis, do you think they're going to tolerate more criminal, illegal aliens murdering people? I'm not saying they all do it. I'm saying the ones that do. These are high-profile stories that terrify people. Are they going to tolerate Donald Trump expanding the war in the Red Sea and in Ukraine? That may be the case. We'll see. I think Russia may be not willing to entertain the ceasefire. What if Trump fails to deliver on his mandate because the judges don't let him and he says, okay, I would not be surprised. Now, my friends, I tell you this. I'm getting worried. Because I said that last year, I believe the Trump presidency would be marginally good. Marginally good. Is a marginally good presidency in his first term. He didn't do anything Ron Paul-esque necessarily. No new wars was fantastic, and the economy was pretty good. It's a net positive presidency. He did a lot of dumb things. You know, he hired Bolton. He'll never live that down. And I thought it'd be marginally good. Well, at the start of his second term, we got Doge, we got RFK Jr., and we're seeing tremendous things. It's fantastic. But now Trump is being obstructed, as we knew he would be, to the point where a line has been crossed. Look, it's one thing if you want to argue that Trump can't deport individuals without a public hearing so we know these individuals are, and they can prove their status or otherwise. Perhaps. It's another thing to say outright they want men in women's prisons. Now you've got an impasse. There's no question there. It's not a question of due process. It's a question of whose rights are being violated. Because no matter how you cut it, someone's rights are going to be violated, right? The left will say it's the trans person's rights. The right will say it's the women's rights in the prison. So what do? There is no answer. If Donald Trump simply abides by the judges, who will all obstruct him, even these Republican appointed ones, then there is no Trump second term. Trump will simply say, I'm going to do it, and then he won't. A couple things have been done. Sure, he did deport these individuals, but he is saying now he's not defying the judges. You can't do that. That's literally what Trump said. You can't do that. We didn't do that. The planes were already over the water. The lawyers are prepared. The judges are prepared, and they will argue Trump has no constitutional authority to do the things he is doing. If Trump does not accomplish these things, we will get no change, and we will have, once again, a marginal presidency. Marginally good. You know, I look at the things that Trump has done, and I say it's exceeded all expectation. Sounds fantastic. Then the judges stop it. And if Trump says, okay, then Trump has done nothing. Now, I'm excited for Pam Bondi. I'm excited for Kash Patel and Dan Bongino, but let's also play this game. The Epstein files. Was it a prank? Were we punked? Pam Bondi says she got the files. They're sickening. She's going to publish them. Nothing's in them. What was sickening? What did she look at? Where are the files? They said they received troves of documents. Where are they at? Now, I'll be fair. It's been a couple weeks and I want to be nice. Maybe it's difficult to go through these things. I trust Kash Patel. He's a good dude. He's a good dude. Maybe they just have to actually now go through documents they've never seen before. I'd appreciate at least updates. Let us keep the faith. Tell us you're working on it. But I got to tell you, my friends, I'll tell you what I think is going to happen. They're going to make moves to try and publish these documents, and a lower court judge will say no. And then what? Can Trump do nothing? Yeah, that's it. That's where we're currently at. The question then becomes, of a wartime president, how much do you escalate? Last night we were talking about this on the Uncensored show, and I just said, the Constitution is over. It's what the left wanted. And I mean it. Guys, the Constitution is over. We can argue free speech, but what does that mean? Some people say it means you can literally say anything as long as you're not doing things. Others say no, it means you can't direct people to commit violence. Porn's also not free speech. The views are completely different. And then the left goes one step further than everybody and says insulting someone is not free speech. So what does it mean? Nobody agrees. We then have the Eighth Amendment, as I've shown you already. What does it mean to have cruel and unusual punishment? What is going to happen now? It's a battle of strength, will, wit, power, etc. The question is, whoever has the power and seeks to impose their interpretation will dictate what these words actually mean. What does cruel and unusual punishment mean to you? Wade Stotts is a commenter. I suggest you check his work out. Had a video a while ago where he said, what is a constitution? A constitution is what constitutes the people, the body politic. The Constitution of the United States is written down. He says the problem is once you've started writing these things down, you're already losing your country. Because what constitutes the people should be known among the people. That's why many countries have what's called an unwritten constitution. For us, the fact that these things are written down, But now they've gone to interpretation beyond what any normal person accepts, shows social discohesion, if that's the right word. There will be no convincing a leftist, and there will be no convincing a conservative. It's now going to come down to who decides they have the power to impose their will. Will Trump defy the courts, or will Trump bow to them? And if he does, then we will live in this Chinese Communist Party style country, and Trump's second term will be a blip. Or Trump will be the fascistic dictator the left claims he is. Not really, but you get the point. He will say, no. The right will agree. The Constitution says you can't do this. It is cruel and unusual punishment. And then what? I don't know. Civil war? You tell me. But I'm going to ask you right now, once again, because I know the answer already. How many of you would say, yes, judge, if he ordered you to put men in a women's prison? This is the line. Like I said, deportations are an interesting procedural question. Where does Trump's authority start and stop? Should the plane have turned around? Do these individuals getting arrested, should they have hearings so the public knows for sure? Maybe. But what about this question? This is a moral hard line for everybody. No conservative would say, okay, judge. They'd say, nice try. But my friends, you're in defiance of the Constitution. The judge said so. You can appeal it. And then you can go to the Supreme Court. You can appeal it all the way up. But if you want to keep men out of a women's prison, you must defy the court now. So what do you do? If you were president, what would you do? Would you say, okay, send the men to the women's prison, and then we'll take it to a higher court? I don't think you would. And therein lies the deep question. What do you do when your judges act outside their jurisdiction? Or when judges order you to violate the law? Or they order you to violate the Constitution? It would be unconstitutional. Donald Trump must then defy the judges and uphold the Constitution. And now you have a bifurcation. One screen, two movies, as Scott Adams says. Both sides arguing the other side has violated the Constitution. That's where we are. Have fun. It's going to get wild, isn't it? It's going to get wild. Live show we got set up for you guys is going to get interesting because the escalation of terror in this country continues, and that's the main story here. They're calling for nationwide protests, and they're cheering on terrorism. Not an exaggeration. On The Daily Show, they actually showed news reports of the terror, and the audience cheers for it. And the host even said, I guess you guys like terrorism. They do. Good luck. I hope you're prepared for the worst to come. We don't want it to, but I'm just saying. Do you have emergency food and water? I hope we don't get to that point. But man, people never see it coming, do they? Gradually, then suddenly. Smash the like button, share the show with everyone you know, and my friends, buy Cast Brew coffee at castbrew.com. It's good stuff. It really is. And it supports the show. Thanks for hanging out, and we'll see you all live at noon.